when we get the miniseries, the Drunkonomics miniseries going, and it's like there's the bar and there's the different characters, and it's like, okay, well, who are these people playing? Because it's just random flashbacks of these celebrities. It's, the big questions are going to be, who do we get for Stellan? Who do we? Like, who is Stellan going to play? Because we have to get him.
Yeah, the Drunkonomics pub reality show.
Yeah, exactly. Who's Ralph Fiennes? Who are we getting Ray Fiennes for? Because like it's like I don't have anyone for that yet.
Yeah, who
like,
would
we don't
be
have
that?
People that they'd be great actors, unless we're just really missing it. And it's like okay, we know that like for Chad, it's Bill Murray.
Yes. Yeah,
like, just without a doubt.
Are you still what's his name? Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, I think he's the only guy that can completely encompass the chaos of my hair.
His face looks exactly like yours, and I feel like him in what's that one movie? Exactly. That one movie that he did with Nick Cage recently. Hilarious, by the way. In case you're wondering, it's like the immeasurable weight of massive talent or something like that. Like the whole time I was watching the movie, I was like, "This is James. This is James." Did you know that over $5 trillion exchanges hands on a daily basis? That's an average of over $220 billion an hour. Now, how does this much money move every single day, and why does it move the way it does? Here on Drunkonomics, two bartenders who also happen to be students at the University of Nebraska Graduate School of Business are going to sit down and drink to the global economy and try and translate it into English. So sit back, relax, pour yourself a stiff one, and have a drink with us to the comedy that is the global economy.
All right, guys, and welcome back to Drunkonomics, the drinking podcast with economics problem. By power of a really awesome, awful bet, up to you. Your call on the result. And the VIX, which, I mean, really, it bottomed out at 1801, right? That was like the intraday low.
I forget what it bottomed out at, but either way, like it's kind of weird being in this position, right? Like I'm
you're Aaron Wong, more gracious host, MGH.
Yeah,
MGH.
It's so weird.
MGH.
It's so weird being like this, and I feel like it's got I don't know how you feel, but like I know you were in extreme discomfort all year last year being less gracious, but now
or being more gracious now. But now I'm less gracious
that's what I mean,
again.
yeah.
And so I'll be honest. Right now, what's playing is like, guess who's back? Back again.
Yeah.
That's just all I'm hearing. But I, James Goldwater, return to my seat of power in the hosting seat of less grace. And boy, do we have a
fun week, or
I don't know, presentation for you guys. Yeah,
boy, do we have a presentation for you. Yeah, exactly. So hopefully you have that stiff one in front of you, unless of course you're about to drive somewhere, because boy,
and then get where you're going first.
Yeah, then get where you're going first, and then buckle up, I guess.
Either way, buckle up, right? Because it's been a week. It's been wild.
It's been wild, but I guess. First off, let's start with, our social media. If you want to follow along with some of our market commentary as it happens, our economic commentary as it happens, it's at Drunkonomical, DRUNK, That's us on
Facebook and Instagram. So in the metaverse,
which
we can pair together, and then separately and not paired with them at all on Twitter.
Is the same. It's our Twitter page. Like if your app still works and stuff, or if it doesn't take 5 minutes to pull up Twitter, like it does for me sometimes. But of course, from there,
and then you can find the invite to our Discord on all three of those. At least, definitely on two of those forever, and on Twitter while supplies last.
Yeah, free to all.
The Discord.
Yeah, free to all. So hop in while it's hot. We got a lot of great channels in there.
Yeah, before too long, we'll open the Drunkonomical Saloon or the Drinkonomist in there, and that'll just be a place where we're going to start dropping recipes for just random Drunkonomics drinks for different moods, for different things. Like I'm trying to come up with a drink to match today's pre-close route, right? So like 600 points out of the Dow in the
Do we come up with a drink with
the market?
Is it like the Boursa's Fireball and milk? Is that like
just like Grandma used to make?
Oh god, that just sounds absolutely horrendous. I feel like that's
here's the thing. I meant to taste that yesterday. I will taste that tonight, and we will get back to you.
Can we? You know what? I think I have the perfect name for that drink. Just in case it's called. I'm just gonna call it the Paradox. I don't think it makes sense.
All right, let's find out.
I think they offset each other, but whatever.
Are we just making?
I'm all ears, Bursa. If you have another name.
I was gonna say, at what point are we just making kind of like low rent eggnog?
Well, speaking of egg,
but I'm in.
Yeah,
we had that report come in. What, Thursday?
Yeah, I think it was Thursday. Well, that was the bet, right? What? So 6.9. It came in well under 6.9. Not bragging, just saying. But I think,
right?
Yeah, I think you had a really good catalyst because you said I don't think companies are going to lower prices, which I agree.
I didn't think
companies
they would,
don't,
at least.
But we're seeing in the major appliances and the used cars in Tesla, prices
TVs,
of a Tesla car.
Yeah,
TVs. that really dragged the CPI index down. If you are long tips, which are treasury inflation protected securities, I'm sorry that this happened because it's index. Just in case you're wondering, inflation's high, yes, but these index-backed securities go off of whether or not inflation increases or decreases. And because inflation acceleration is decreasing, tips aren't doing so well because it's CPI plus a certain I forget gap. That's a
plus
margin.
It's a gap to
that's
essentially make this bet to make this gain even in the world. It's not just going to keep up with inflation. It's going to stay ahead of inflation.
Yeah, that's essentially the coupon for tips securities. I don't know why we're going off. I don't know why I got off on this tangent, but just so you know, if you're holding any tips and they're decreasing in value, it's because coupon payments for tips are shrinking. So investors are less willing to pay whatever tips used to be trading at. But anyways,
so you're seeing it start to cool, and that's well, my bet was they wouldn't lower their prices. That was my thought process was. I can't see eggs getting cheaper. I didn't see prices getting lowered. I didn't see people coming up with more money somehow, that actually would have slowed inflation, but I didn't see them lowering prices. I did see December being better from a retail perspective than it ended up being, especially because you saw that data today, right?
Which one?
I was down 1.1. Down 1.1 year over year.
Retail sales?
Retail in December. Yeah.
Wow.
In December was not good.
Okay, so I guess that explains why.
Which would explain it, right? So TVs were less expensive and people are buying less, or people bought less.
Yeah, but it's still weird. Like I feel like all these high ticket items, because like if you think about CPI in terms of the things that you actually consume, right? And CPI, this is the dumb thing about CPI, or a lot of people say real inflation is CPI less food and energy, which I'm like, those are the things we need, right? Those
are the things that I need every day.
Exactly. But if you look at food and energy, that is really pulling CPI up, right? But if you look at things like televisions, right, and used cars,
so durable goods. Like the thing is, the consumption products. So we understand that based on a very basic model, the U.S. is 70% consumption. That's the economy. Yeah, the consumption stuff that's all more expensive. Yeah. The investment, or it's still part of consumption, but it's durable versus non-durable goods. Like an egg is non-durable.
Well, you're not buying an egg and trying to
life.
Yeah, I mean, you're not buying an egg and trying to sell it a year later, right? Like if you're a restaurant, that's a different story. But like, you're not but if you buy a TV, like you can at least salvage half a value 5 years later or something like that.
You can get some salvage value as long as it's still working in a little while.
Right.
Whereas like your TV, but you're not buying your TV once a week. You're probably not buying a TV once a week. You're buying your TV every few years, right? Like so, kind of like a car, every 5 to 7, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas like eggs, depending on, I mean, if you're Aaron, you're buying eggs.
I do buy eggs quite a bit.
Once a week, maybe once every other week. It depends on.
It's once a week, and it really just depends on, am I getting a dozen or am I getting 18? That's
exactly. All it comes down to. That's the thing is it's that whole like the rate of consumption, and you're right. I know what you're all thinking, which is to say, well, there's a big price difference between the two, and I'm like, yeah, but 6 times 3, right?
Right, exactly.
It still gets me to 18. Like if I'm buying this at a sixth the price, but I'm buying it 6 times, it's like you've often heard that weird expression, like it's really expensive to be poor. Like because you've heard that, right? Where it's like, you can buy a really nice pair of shoes for $100 and they'll last you 3 years, or you can buy a really cheap pair of shoes for $20, but they'll last you
3
weeks.
Yeah. Or 6 months.
So it's like, well, what happened? Well, when you can't afford $100 shoes, you have to buy the cheap shoes.
Yeah.
But the amount you spend on shoes ends up being more because you're replacing so often, right? So it's where this how do eggs catch up to a TV? Well, it depends on who you are.
And I think it's it's really expensive being poor saying has to do a lot with the living paycheck to paycheck saying, right? Like the reason why I can't buy nice shoes is because I need that next paycheck to come in, but I need shoes now. So I'll buy the shoes now.
So I'm getting these,
and by the time my next paycheck comes in, I'll probably need another pair of shoes because these ones suck.
And so but it becomes if you can't get out of that trap, right?
And I know that's kind of a silly analogy because who buys shoes every 2 weeks? But but just take it.
Yeah, but what we're comparing that to is like what I'd really say is how much do you spend on eggs in 4 years? Is that more expensive than a TV?
A TV, yeah, exactly.
And I'm willing to bet that right now.
It probably is, yeah. I mean, this is the thing is like, I'm not buying TVs because eggs are super expensive. Is that the reason why I'm not buying TVs? I don't know. Either way, what I'm trying to say is like, a lot of the things that, it's always like high ticket, high dollar items, things like women's dresses. And I'm assuming, when I'm looking at this chart, it's saying women's dresses are less expensive than they were a year ago. I'm assuming it has to do like with $3,000 dresses, not just like, a $50 dress.
Yeah. Well, but the other thing what we know with TVs is that it's like semiconductors cost twice, 3 times what they normally cost last year and the year before.
Yeah.
And the price is getting normal again. So we're in that point now where it's like, okay, the cost of the materials has gone down. So
exactly.
The final good is now less expensive. But
remember like when there were inventory problems that a lot of retail stores were having? So like, do you think that plays a factor into?
Speaking of dresses, you mean when like Target was like, oh, you got that shirt in the wrong size? No, we don't want it back. You keep it. Here's the right size. Go.
Take that one too.
Just get it out of here.
Exactly. No, yeah. So, and like, I think maybe that has a little bit to do with what's going on, right?
You asked me a really interesting question the last time we talked, and it was, how do you determine, like, prices, they don't always come down, but like, how do you determine what is this a high price?
Yeah, but like, what does what does eventually come down in price? Like, how do you distinguish what things eventually come down in price and what things don't? What things stay expensive? Because at some point, like companies are just like, people are still buying it at this price. I'm not going to lower the price at all, right? And
exactly,
and we're not producing as much anymore because we're in this economic cycle where we forecasted this much demand. We didn't produce, 50,000 TVs. We only produced 40,000. Right?
But people are still buying. Or they're still, we're still getting orders for new TVs. So it's like, okay.
Exactly. So how do you distinguish that? Like, how do you distinguish what eventually will come down in price? I have my method.
Because you had a great metric. Like, your metric was...
Mine is very, very simple. Obviously, like, I'm dumbing it down way too much.
Mine isn't. Because, like, mine, I know, I was like, I'm still saying, like, you have to go kind of case by case, sector by sector.
Of course.
Thing by thing, almost.
Yeah, but I feel
like yours is a lot more broad stroke.
No, mine is very, like, I feel like if you just want, like, a 5-second answer, this is my 5-second answer as to what I think will eventually come down in price, how to distinguish what will come down in price and what won't. And it's, is there or is there not a futures contract on that thing, right? Corn, futures contracts, that's going to bring the price down, I think. Oil, that's a tough one. That really is a tough one because it really, kind of like what you're saying, sector by sector, what's going to happen with trade agreements.
Yeah, because like when I look at them, like, because you're right. Like I've been thinking about that since you said it, and like even like when we were talking about it initially, and then like even today, I was like, well, that's a really good 5-second answer. That's a great
but I feel like it makes sense because it's like coffee, right? Like coffee, I think is going to come down in price. Like, orange juice is going to come down in price.
Well, so for me, I think you're right. Definitely about orange juice right now, just because it has been a very mild winter.
Oh yeah,
but like it's one of those things where, so like for me. I like that. I'm going to use that as the base answer. Is if there's a futures contract, it's probably going to come back down. But then within that, you have to look at very specific things and be like, oh, this one might not. And this one may not either. And it's all, for me, like for me, oil is like, okay, there's sticky prices as one aspect of it, which is to say like bad news, oil prices go up. Good news, they stay up for a little bit until they decide they're going to come back down. So there's that sticky price aspect, the elasticity aspect of it. And then the big one for me is, are there any participants in the market that are making it so that it's not exactly a free market?
Yeah, well, I think,
are there any cartels involved?
Yeah, no, okay, yeah. So that's the other thing too, is if there are not cartels involved. So I think that's kind of like a separate thing. But I think in terms of elasticity, a lot of that can be looped in under the is there or is there not a futures contract, right?
That's okay.
The reason why you have futures contract is because this is not a very elastic product. Lumber isn't necessarily
or it's because we're dealing with a timing issue, right? So like lumber, like I can't just it's like grain, corn. I might have 2 crops of that a year, but I almost certainly have one, right? So it's like with wheat, I might do 2 wheats a year, 2 harvests of wheat a year. With corn, I'm probably only doing 1, but I'm doing 1 every year. I put it in the ground, I can extract it within 12 months. Whereas lumber, it's like, okay, no, I have to plant trees and then I have to let them grow for years. Right. So it's this like how long, it's like how long is like the short term versus long term on this.
Right. So like if everybody wants lumber now, right? I mean, so I guess, there is a case by case basis, but I think,
you're not wrong. Like as a whole, the futures contract does make that work.
Yeah. It does kind of give like a much narrower bucket, right? Like, whereas there's no futures contracts for like things like college educations. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it's, I don't think college educations are going to come down in price anytime soon. Right.
Oh yeah.
Bottom line of what I'm trying to say is is there or is there not a futures contract on college education? There isn't, right? It's
not at present.
No.
Well, it's because it really is. There's not.
I'm sure there's some form of derivative out there that maybe locks it in. Similar to like an ESA account or something like that.
Yeah, there's certain things that will lock in certain pricing.
Like a Coverdale account. Yeah, something like that. But like, yeah, but like as
a whole, no.
Yeah, because it's not a uniform object, right? Like just like there's no features on cars. You know, cars I think will come down in price, but that's just because like everything in a car there's a futures contract on everything in a car, right?
Yeah, there's also 5,000 Ford Focuses that behave the same. As a whole, they behave. They're exactly. The same thing.
They're a uniform product, and
whereas
and if you really wanted to, you can trade them, right? That's what this used cars business is, right? You can trade Ford Focuses for a living.
Well, I mean, like, if we want to take it a step further, we could just say like there are two. I happen to know two Wongs who look very similar. Played golf at Nebraska. Got degrees from Nebraska, but boy, could they not go to the other's job and do that.
No, exactly. No, I would fail miserably.
There might have been a time at Cigars Lounge where that was doable, but it's not. But not now.
Well, I mean, like, if he's a physical therapist, I mean, what do physical therapists do anyway? So they just say, "Hey, pick that up and put it over there. Now, pick this up. It's a little bit heavier, but pick this one up now." How does that feel?
All right, I need you to give me 3 more. Yeah, Push yourself.
Give me 3
this
more.
It's gonna hurt. Yeah, it's supposed to hurt.
Keep your core tight. Keep your core tight. Yeah,
I'm so sorry, Nate. I know Aaron isn't, but I am.
Yeah, no, I don't feel bad. Well, he does teach physical therapists or physical therapy. He's a DPT professor now. So
is he? That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I can't. I'll be honest with you, I can't do that. But the actual PT stuff.
No, but it would also be really funny to see him like sitting at State Street one of these days in a meeting like.
I mean, like,
oh God,
okay, no. So how do you feel about the aerospace and defense sector?
It's like, well, you got to keep your core tight. You got to keep your core tight. It'd be really funny. He'd be like, well, you got to keep your core tight, and they'd be like, that's brilliant.
That's brilliant.
All right, let's get in. Get in there on Lockheed.
Yeah, let's get in there. So the aggregate sector. What did you say the price to earnings on that was again? Just enterprise value. I don't know.
Yeah,
whatever.
But that's what we mean. Like, yeah. So in education, hell, you could take people that have been in the same. I have to imagine if you took 2 people who were in the same classes, every section, everything, and then you put them out in the world, despite they got the same education, they're not necessarily interchangeable. So there is no uniform.
But that's why I like that general, like, okay, here you go. Like anybody that wants to simplify what they think will come down in price and what they, because like that question gets floated around a lot. Like, will prices come down eventually? And I think it's yes for those things, right? The cure for high prices is high prices.
Absolutely.
Right. Because at some point you can't
afford it. Like, and that's what we saw. And that's what we saw with the December numbers, right? So like December consumer spending was down 1.1% year over year. And that's huge. That's where you're really going to, like, December is supposed to, and that's part of what fueled, I think, this rout in the markets today is that and some other things. But you're seeing that consumers aren't spending, whether it's because they can't, which I don't think they can. I don't think they can afford to. Well, I think, or simply won't at these prices.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, like, so the December numbers, I think a lot of that has to do with discretionary. It's the whole basic discretionary versus disposable income.
Absolutely,
argument, right? Whereas discretionary income is a joke now. Disposable income is becoming a joke.
I was going to say is a.
It's so.
What's that?
Yeah, it's so compressed. I mean, like, how do you explain credit card debt without without looking at disposable income? Because, like, the difference really, discretionary income is like, this is when you make this, what you have to spend money on. Disposable income is what's left over.
It's what's left over after you spend what you have to spend.
Yeah, exactly. Like things like
with housing and food being where they are.
Right. And eggs, right? Maybe at some point people are just like, I'm not buying eggs.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the cure for high prices is high prices, right? At some point, like,
and we got to say this, we've really got to pour one out for those high school pranksters. Can't egg a house not at these prices. You could tell a neighborhood's doing really, really, you could tell that a neighborhood and the people in those communities are doing well if teenagers are still egging houses.
I mean, what do you do if your house gets egged? Like, I feel like that's a compliment.
At least it tells you
decorating your house.
Well, it tells you that your neighborhood isn't in bad. That your community's doing okay,
dude.
Still,
yeah. So
right? it's like okay, people still got egg money,
dude. That is literally that is a value prop, right? Like, if you're about to sell your house and you can can literally show your house that's egged, and it's like, this is how well this community is.
There's a strong economy in this neighborhood. This is a strong economy.
This is a really eloquent community. As you can tell,
They got
eggs
eggs.
to just throw at.
They've got eggs to throw.
houses
Like,
with.
and that's not the parents, ladies and gentlemen. That's the high schoolers.
That's
the high schoolers
school.
have
The
eggs.
high school. That's
Like
their allowance
when
money.
the kids have eggs, when the kids have an egg allowance money.
Dude,
That's how,
that is a total value
that's
prop,
so
dude.
bad.
That is a total.
I was thinking about that the other day. I was just like, man, what are kids throwing? I know 2-ply because that's just what you got to do. But like,
well,
no
it's like,
eggs.
it's like
That's
what,
crazy.
when you used to TP people, like when there was a toilet paper shortage, like when you got TP'd. If you got
Yeah.
TP'd, it's like, whoa, dude, how's that?
I mean,
how's
they
that not a neighborhood?
really don't like you.
Or they really do like you. They're like, here's some toilet paper that we spent.
Oh, yeah, the way they don't-
$25 a dozen for.
The way they donated it was really, really weird, but they were.
Yeah,
but they
yeah.
cared.
I'm sure they meant well.
And, and again, once more, that's an economic prop to the area. Goes, hey, look how strong the economy
Yeah,
is.
seriously. This is, as you can tell,
they're
this is a
doing
really eloquent community. Inflation hasn't affected this neighborhood. And if you
Absolutely
move into
not.
this neighborhood, inflation may
Just
or
think
may
about
not
that.
affect
Everyone
you.
around you is going to be. Everyone around you's. There's money being spent, so that the grocery store's not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of which, just so we know, I forgot to make this disclaimer earlier. Did you make this disclaimer earlier? Where nothing we
didn't,
say.
but-
Oh well, let's make it real quick now. Nothing we say is reflective.
Absolutely. So just so you know, nothing we say is.
Yeah, it's-
absolutely nothing we say is financial advice. It's not reflective of our respective employers,
Clients,
or
anybody
their
we
opinions.
represent. Yeah, if it happens
Absolutely.
to be
And
their
it-
opinion, it's completely coincidental. Believe me.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. Yeah, we're not out here breaching insider information.
Yeah.
But that's a fair warning. Nothing we've said previously. Nothing we've said going forward. So
Exactly. But yeah, with that said, I mean, I don't know. I think this is a good time to transition over into what we said we were going to talk about.
Is it the much vaunted part 2?
Yeah.
Well, because it's the NDB really is what we're looking at as the driving force of BRICS.
Well,
'Cause, like,
yeah.
I know you have this idea that BRICS is a competitor.
Yeah,
to the
but I don't like.
petrodollar.
This is the thing: is I don't want to present it as if it is a competitor to the petrodollar. Like, as we talked about this last week, where the petrodollar and the petrogon, like, is there a threat to the petrodollar or is there not? Because if there is a threat to the petrodollar, that ain't good for the dollar. And if it ain't good for the dollar, it's really not good for the entire world.
Well,
Fortunately or
it's not good for
unfortunately,
me because I live in a place that uses dollars. So it's
it's weird because like if you
incentivized to
live,
that.
it's weird because if you live in a place on Earth, odds are you're somewhere in your country uses plenty of dollars.
At some
right?
point, yeah.
Yeah, probably. Especially if you buy oil from Saudi Arabia.
Oh, you buy oil
gotta
from
use a
anywhere,
dollar.
really. At some point,
Yeah,
you're going to use a dollar.
Probably got to
and,
use a dollar. Yeah. So
And that strong demand for dollars gives the dollar a stronger buying power in most places. And thus, that is good for American consumers,
right, exactly.
of overseas goods, right? So that's beneficial to us.
Right, exactly. But I think, like, let's just kind of like get this out of the way too. Like, more importantly than, a strong dollar, if you're an American, more important than a strong dollar is a stable dollar. Because if your dollar is way too strong, nobody's buying anything from America.
Nobody's buying your goods.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a problem.
So, like, if I was Canada and I wanted to buy something in America, if I wanted to buy something American, and it's like the dollar is so strong that whereas it used to be $2 Canadian for $1 American dollar, I don't know what the exchange rate is, but I'm just
one Canadian dollar gets 74 cents.
Okay, so
what it's trading at today.
Okay, so if you turn that on its head, 4/3. So what would 4/3 be? Whatever,
so it takes you $1.35 Canadian cents.
1.3,
to
right?
Get a
yeah,
US
but if
dollar.
all of a sudden
1.35.
Yeah, so I guess to follow along that example, if all of a sudden it takes $2 Canadian to get $1 American dollar, it's like, well, I ain't buying Kentucky bourbon anymore because that's
too stick to my Crown Royal and
ugh. But if you have to, you have to, right? Like it's like, all right, well, I still make 50,000 Canadian dollars a year, but that only can buy me so much bourbon.
I still gotta fill and kill.
Yeah, but that like 50,000 Canadian dollars can only get me $25,000 of bourbon, whereas it used to be able to get me $40,000 worth of bourbon. So I'm not going to buy bourbon anymore. I'll just do Crown, right? It's a good substitute.
Absolutely.
So that's what I mean. Let me start by saying that a strong American dollar isn't the best thing. It's a good thing if you're an American, because you can go out and buy things.
But more than that, you want stable.
Yeah, because you want people to buy your things too. You want a larger market.
Absolutely.
Right? Like if you did sell bourbon, you would like to sell it to customers, not just
in
America.
More buyers than fewer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. More buyers you have, the better you're doing.
Exactly.
So the easier it is.
Yeah, but like we talked about the petrodollar last week because, like we mentioned, pretty much all oil, not all oil, but like, is it like 80% of oil is bought with the US dollar or something like that?
It's traded in dollars or I guess it's traded in like dollar notional value.
Yeah.
Right. So
exactly.
they use the dollar to create, they go to They go to a common currency, the dollar, and that's how they exchange.
Yeah.
It might be Saudi oil for, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, actually, I do think I reversed what I said. I think
euros, but it'll be exchanged they'll convert everything to dollars and then they'll send.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
That's what they'll do the negotiating into US dollar.
Well, yeah. And the crazy thing too is like a lot of other countries sit on a ton of dollar reserves because of this.
It's a safe thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's known that no matter what, so it's what's great is if they're going to do business with the U.S., they have to do business in dollars. So they're already sitting on some. But the next thing is if they're going to go do business with if they're going to do business with China, they might be sitting on some yuan. But they also know the Chinese do have an appetite for U.S. dollars.
Absolutely.
They also know. I mean, if I was sitting here and talking to Aaron, I was like, hey, I can buy this from you. I can buy this from you in dollars, or I can buy this from you in Russian ruble. Aaron would probably say dollars, please.
I probably would. I would bet on me taking the dollar over the ruble.
Now, if I'm doing business with, say, Kazakhstan, and I said, hey, I've got dollars and I've got rubles, they might be more interested in the rubles because they have a closer relationship with Russia.
Yeah,
right?
but
they might say that. But they're still probably going to say dollars.
Yeah,
because the dollars can always buy rubles, and they can always buy more rubles later. They think, or probably.
Yeah. True. So obviously, there's a global appetite for the U.S. dollar, and I think we mentioned this because BRICS, so the BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa,
India, China, and South Africa.
Yeah, it's starting to gain some momentum. I think. Who was it? Egypt expressed interest. Argentina expressed interest.
Turkey is talking to them.
No one cares about Turkey. And of course, the UAE, they have some stability issues.
Putting it mildly. They've already formed. So they've already formed one interesting kind of economic. So one, they're trying to be there. So they're more an economic bloc, or they're trying to become an economic bloc that works together in the same way as the EU works together as an economic bloc, in the same way, or very similar way.
Yeah.
To the United States, right? But they have formed the NDB, right?
Yes.
So the New Development Bank.
Which is kind of like, is that kind of like the IMF and the World Bank?
Yeah, it is and it isn't. It is in that it's doing, it essentially is purported to do the same thing, to make money available to do. Now, specifically, they want to do infrastructure projects in developing countries, right? So
that sounds a lot like something we've heard before.
Something else.
Yeah.
What would that be? If you let me put on my tin hat for a moment, the Belt and Road. So my tin hat actually says on this one that this is China has convinced several other nations to put forward funding to help China continue to do the Belt and Road. And as I said, I've realized that I don't think I think my language has been a little bit too clean this year, and I regret that. But too. China's found a way to, at least my theory is that China has found a new way to fuck both borrowers and lenders. It's essentially that it's co-opting the NDB to create external capital for Belt and Road.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, is if you have a loan sharking business, don't be surprised when no one really wants to do business with you. And two, don't be surprised when you default on loans or when your loans get defaulted upon. Because if you're going to be a loan shark, which China is, essentially the Belt and Road
is loan shark.
Yeah, it's literally like loan sharking at a high government sponsored level.
Oh yeah,
that's essentially
it's
what
government
it is.
Sponsored loan sharking.
Yeah, I don't know, the NDB, we're acting like it's a new thing. It's been around for 9-10 years now.
It has been, but they've only really started about 15, 16 major infrastructure projects.
Yeah, so it took them forever to get funding because infrastructure projects are worth. Think about how much funding you need for an infrastructure project.
They're not insubstantial. But the other thing is that obviously they're going to, is it like the World Bank and the IMF? Yes. Is it different? Also, yes. It's more like private insurance as well. It is exclusionary. It will say no to things that it looks at and goes, there's no way to make our money back, or this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Whereas the IMF and the World Bank, eventually they'll go, well, we can't have them collapsing. Got to do something. And so they will.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I'm not a huge fan of the World Bank and the IMF existing. Everybody pays their dues to the World Bank and the IMF.
Which are essentially the NDB, but by the Western world after the Second World War. So it's one of those things where it's the same thing. It's just...
Yeah, so to be fair, I'm not a huge fan of
slightly more altruistic? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's I'm not a huge fan of these globalization entities like that, right? like if there ever was a new world order, it'd be, and obviously I'm going way too far off the rails here. So I don't believe in this happening. But like if there was like a conspiracy theory behind this new world order, the World Bank seems like they would be the culprit.
It does sound a little ominous. It does sound like kind of the villains from like the old James Bond films when it was like Spectre
like the Dr. No's of this world and the Goldfingers of this world. But
exactly. We're going to destroy Fort Knox, and I have the largest gold supply other than that, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And that is how I will do this.
Which is like a mint julep. Yeah. That's the only...
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. It's the greatest line. That's one of the greatest lines in cinema history.
Yeah, that's one of the best lines ever. No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. But no, it's like, I'm not obviously, if you can tell, I'm not a fan of the NDB as well. I'm not a fan of BRICS. I'm not a fan of cartels and OPEC.
Well,
in all fairness, I don't like any of these things.
That's fair. I have a lot of concerns about BRICS. I don't see that necessarily working as like as an entity that they don't have quite enough in common.
Yeah.
But there is one thing that worries me more, and it is the addition of Egypt, the UAE, and Turkey to BRICS.
Well,
because they're going to have to come up with
they haven't joined yet. They've only expressed interest to the South African president.
But if they did join, but if they did join, and this is my series of ifs. If they did join, they have to come up with a new acronym. And I think I'm afraid that new acronym would be brisket.
Oh,
and if they take brisket away from me, I'll be angry,
dude,
because I love brisket, and I don't want to I don't want to be on record saying I love brisket, and someone going, like
these people,
no, I don't care for that brisket. I want
to go to Austin, Texas, brisket. And go to Franklin's Barbecue and get brisket.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right, and it's just not going to work. So it's not going to work if people are thinking I'm talking about economic news, but I'm actually talking about Franklin's, and that's where I'm at. No. And I don't think I'm not going to change my position on that. I don't.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. This is really just a tinfoil hat thing, because I don't we're projecting the emergence, because there's a lot of momentum I think behind BRICS. Right, with President Xi going to Saudi Arabia over and over again now.
Yeah.
It seems like he made a visit 3 times last year in 2022, at least 2 times. And the last time he went, which was about a month ago, it was apparently it was an agreement to buy a lot of. It was a very good visit for China. Yeah. And when I say for China, I mean for President Xi.
I look at it, and it's this very the whole idea of BRICS. It is interesting. It makes sense that you want to have that as developing nations, you'd want to work together, especially if each one of you has a different specialization.
Yeah.
The thing is with BRICS is that I think that the R and the C are going to start dragging the rest of them down, because they both have, as of last week, they both have declining populations. Both Russia and China have shrinking populations.
That was huge too. So China's population decline. Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, it's China has very serious demographic problems, and that have not been addressed and have been exacerbated by things like the one-child policy, the two-child policy, and then just basic economic conditions.
Well, they've letting the foot off the gas on that one-child policy.
It's gone now. Now they're encouraging you to have kids. So I should tell you, they've recognized the problem. The problem is that
and not just men. Not just boys.
Yeah. But hand in hand, they've realized. It seems that they've realized if you don't have women, you can't have kids. But in every generation, there's still more men than women, and by several percentage points. It's not there's an excess that can't have kids. There's an excess male population. The next part is even in their younger generations, they're not having kids. They aren't getting married. They're getting married for economic reasons, but they aren't having children for economic reasons. So it's this very
Or honestly, I've heard this story too, just from relatives that know people in China. But it's like people in China aren't having kids because they don't like the leadership. That's a direct quote.
You often hear the question of look at the world around you. Why would I want to bring kids into it?
Yeah, exactly.
Which sounds like what they're saying. It's look at this place.
Yeah, and also if you just don't have the money, if you're barely making it on your own, and a kid comes into your life, you got another mouth to feed. Yeah, no. So that's a big thing in China, especially China has driven their economy for the longest time, aside from Hong Kong, is cheap labor. Where does cheap labor come from? Comes from a lot of people.
It comes from having an excess population.
Yeah, so if population is declining, all of a sudden that is less marketable for the rest of the world.
Well, your labor isn't less expensive. And here's the next thing. It's on top of China having now a declining population, they also have an older population. They have an aging population.
Yeah.
So it's not that they don't have enough people to replace it. It's becoming a problem. If you don't have enough kids, you can't you can't replace people as they pass. And
Exactly. Yeah.
so you have to deal with that issue. And it's this, with China specifically, the issue is that they have an aging population that soon won't be able to work and do the jobs.
Yeah.
And so then the labor becomes too expensive because there isn't enough of it. On top of like other economic factors that are causing businesses and industries to pull out of China, move to India, right? So
for geopolitical issues,
into another part of, go to a different part of the BRICS agreement, or go to Indonesia or Malaysia, which aren't part of that, but they're part of ASEAN. ASEAN.
They're closely tied.
So it's or to Vietnam. Right. So you see this, like, they're pulling out of China because they have a shrinking population, they have an aging population while they're at it. So that's issues. In Russia, the shrinking population is different.
Pretty close. It's a pretty similar issue across the board in Russia, but it's different, right? It's
a little different.
It's more like a health thing, and the life expectancy is shrinking.
It's general health. Its general health is bad. If you are a male, let me phrase this. If you are a male, there is only, and I'm going to make this joke every time. It's not really a joke though. It's a glib statement, which is to say there's only one place where you have where the Russian population is declining faster than Russia, and it's Ukraine, like, because they're actively, there's active measures on that there. But in Russia, like, if you're a young man, they're sending you to Ukraine. That's not good news for life expectancy, right?
Yeah.
If you're an older male, you're probably drinking yourself to death. HIV is a very serious problem in Russia. It's a health thing that's going wild. So you've got a population of 143 million and declining by a not insubstantial percentage every year in Russia. In China, this is the first census tick that we've seen down in several decades. So it's like, okay, is this more data needed to determine if this is a thing?
Yeah, and I've heard from a lot of political experts that have covered China, like people from Bloomberg and people from Fox and CNN, and a lot of, just like all over the spectrum. And everybody unanimously has actually agreed on the fact that China might have been fudging with their numbers to express a population growth over the last 4 or 5 years, since 2017, 2018. So for the last half decade,
I'll be honest, in China, since 2020, at least, I am willing to wager they have had declining population, in that I think very substantially deaths have exceeded births.
Right. Well, because COVID didn't do them any favors, and they don't have an actual legit vaccine.
No, they don't. Yeah. And so now that they've gotten rid of all the restrictions, their hospitals are overwhelmed, their crematoriums are overwhelmed, right? So this is, when your crematoriums don't have enough, they can't keep up, you've got a problem. There's a problem with people going out of the world, and your hospitals are overwhelmed. And generally speaking, people are born in hospitals. That may not be true in China, but in the rest of the developed world, that is true. And when everyone else at the hospital that isn't being born has COVID or is very sick from COVID, it's not a great place to bring a baby.
Right. 100%. Yeah. So, maybe China drags them down, but I think what China really is trying to do is, I think they're trying to loan shark all, like, the rest of the emerging markets around the world. And two, I think they're really trying to give the petrodollar a run for its money. I think they're probably trying now, because
there may be a realization that they can compete for 10 years, but in about 10 years, all these problems will be home to roost.
Exactly. The chickens will come home to roost, like that line in Wolf of Wall Street. But like, the reason why I bring this up is because, I know I said earlier that, like, I don't want to put my conspiracy theory hat on, and I don't think China is really trying to do.
No, it's self-interest, though.
Yeah, or I don't think the main interest of China doing this is to take over the petrodollar. But, like, if you think about it, maybe this is one of those things where the BRICS agreement and the NDB, maybe this is a way that they kind of knock out a bunch of birds with the same stone, right? Where they really give the petrodollar a run for its money.
It's an activity of self-interest. Like, this is good for me,
right?
And if it's good for me, and it happens to, like, piss off the neighbor, so much the better, right? It's one of those where it's like, and it does that?
Exactly. Yeah, so, like, I don't know. I forget how big the trade agreement was. It was the China-Saudi Arabia trade agreement, and it wasn't very big. It was it's 50 billion or 60 billion, which is nothing. It's nothing.
Yeah. It's what you would hear a lot of times is it's not how big or what you did, it's what that represents.
Exactly.
Like, what is it? An American Gangster. Okay, great roles.
Great. Oh my God.
Denzel, an American Gangster.
Like Denzel. Oh my God.
There's another one in the top 5.
That's a really good one.
But there's that point where he's meeting with the Italian mafia, with the mob guy, and he just goes, it's what you represent to them. You represent progress, Frank.
Yeah. Progress. A successful African American businessman.
Successful African American man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like they can't stand you, Frank.
It's kind of like, yeah, like
That's
okay, you've made 3 trips to Saudi Arabia. That's more than you've ever made in this short of a period of time. Head scratcher.
It's
Also,
more trips outside of China, and it's who you're meeting when you go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And also, you have these trade alliances and business alliances with South Africa and in India and Russia. Like, is it going to become a BRICS versus a the World Bank and the IMF thing? I don't think so.
Well, I don't think it will be. It's for me. I would be more concerned. It's not the presence of Russia and China, I think, dragged this down in the long run. But I think that if you had a real union that, for very basic reasons, was BIS, so Brazil, India, and South Africa, that's a very powerful trade bloc right there.
Yeah.
They're all dealing with very similar demographic issues, i.e. increasing populations, pretty substantial income inequality, large populations of impoverished. But if they can improve their quality, the quality of life of those people, and as they're producing in Brazil, you have huge amounts of agricultural and other industrial and some industrial
Brazil
output.
is a wealth of Brazil is just
has a wealth of resources.
Just unbelievable. Yeah. Just
South Africa,
gorgeous country,
has
too.
the same thing.
Yeah.
South Africa has the same thing and is very conveniently located on the southern horn of Africa, the Cape of Good Hope. Very, very important and critical sea trade route if you're moving between countries in the southern hemisphere. And third, India. India has a large population.
Yeah, well, even to like Florida.
Oh yeah, up the Atlantic seaboard. India has a lot of industrial production ability and is closer to Saudi Arabia and the major oil producers than China is even. Yeah. So it's cheaper to get things there. But the next thing is, if you think about the 3 of them, if they were to get Egypt involved, now the Suez Canal is also part of this economic
and that's
bloc.
a huge, remember how drastic of an
the
effect?
Evergrande?
That Evergrande clog, man, like you think about how drastic of an effect that had on the global supply chain. Everybody freaked out.
I really wonder, because it's like, okay, what cost more money in economic damage? A drunk guy in a canal or a drunk guy on the Exxon Valdez? And the answer is a drunk guy in a canal.
Yeah.
Now, the Exxon Valdez created an ecological disaster.
Yeah, we're measuring different things. Not saying one's better or worse,
but it turns out from a purely economic perspective, it's better to have a drunk guy with an oil tanker hitting rocks than it is just slightly turning and hitting a sand wall.
Yeah, dude.
That I'm trying to be.
No,
I mean, and here's the real problem. If you then add Turkey to that block, and this is the thought that's just occurring. If you add Turkey to that block, which adds the Dardanelles Strait, that then chokes off 25% of the world's grain supply coming out of the Ukraine and Russia. When that normalizes and stabilizes because it comes out of the Black Sea. You've now got 2 very important straits and some very important waterways under the control of a single economic union, which is in a position to do its own industrial production, produce a lot of its own mineral raw materials, a lot of its own agricultural and lumber product raw materials.
Yeah, like we mentioned, trading not trading, but transporting goods through water. Number one, if you can, most efficient
way.
Absolutely most efficient way.
Yeah. So our economic blocks.
I mean, Turkey
is that an economic block?
Yeah. I mean, Turkey is really just if Erdogan gets his head out of his ass, maybe there's potential there, or if I don't know, maybe they bring on a new guy. Maybe they kind of do out with old Cliff Kingsbury or Scott Frost.
They're gonna have to. I think they're either gonna have to come up with a new guy, or they're going to have to finally ram it through his head. Lower rates and more money do not curb inflation.
Exactly.
Look, I know you're all saying that 75% inflation is bad, but we need to lower rates to get inflation under control.
75% inflation is bad? Wow.
This is not a...
obviously, it is.
It's worse. I would say it's worse than bad. That would be...
but it's better than 100% inflation, right?
Yeah, but I'm not
trying to compete here. I'm not trying to win the, what has worse inflation.
Okay, hang on. As of December 28th, I'm sorry, guys. The Turkish inflation numbers are in. Inflation is down year over year.
Oh my gosh.
It fell sharply to 66.8%.
Oh, that's right. I think I did see that. I did, because I was like, it's almost 69%. Okay, but
I know it was which would have been funny.
66% inflation, man. That is
67, 66.8. That's 67%.
67% inflation. That's 2/3. Yeah, whatever. Like that's crazy inflation. But that's the thing. It's like I don't know. Like I don't think BRICS is a long way to go if it wants to compete with the World Bank and the IMF and obviously
or NDB. The
NDB. But I mean, they have a long way to go in terms of competing with OPEC and the trade agreements that pretty much the Western world has with OPEC.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. I'll put it like this. If Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping want to meet with us to discuss them no longer actually having free democratic process in their countries, we'll meet you at Franklin's Barbecue in Austin, Texas. We'll hash this out
over some brisket.
It's not going to be easy. You guys are probably gonna have to go. But at that point, with you guys out of the picture and with legitimate democratic process in place, all these countries then have a little bit more in common, governmentally at least.
Yep.
And I'll be a little less concerned about brisket. Now, put it this way, I won't be concerned about brisket at all.
While Aaron Franklin's there,
because I know that brisket's going to be great.
No, I think it's fascinating. We'll see. Like, I don't want to compare it. Like, I don't want to bring it up as if it's like going to be a massive fight between BRICS and the BRICS alliance and NATO or the EU or whatever it is. Like,
no, and this would take. I mean, if everything was perfect. If the countries started to do everything they possibly could and started today, and everything was lined up and primed to go, and there was a legitimately perfect plan, and they knew exactly what they were doing and how things were going to plan, this would still take decades.
Yeah, like I mean, even if they were just to go up against the U.S. alone, like they'd have no chance. Just
to build the infrastructure and educate a population and to begin the process of the industrialization and everything else, that will take decades. Because the education will take generations.
But just from like a monetary standpoint, like, I mean,
that's if they had the money.
Yeah, and if BRICS had a market cap, it's not, right? Yeah. Whereas like the U.S. market cap, and what I mean is really just GDP, like it's several trillion, it's almost 30 trillion, right? So there's nothing to worry about at the moment, but we'll see how it develops. I don't like these alliances because I think, these alliances, I mean, think about how World War I started. It's, you punch my friend, now I don't like you. But it's, that times 7, on both sides. So that's kind of how it started. But
so yeah, if we look at the four of them, the GDP would be a little over 4 trillion.
Yeah, so that's what I mean.
US dollars. And US GDP is
24 trillion. GDP. Like, yeah, it's like 24 trillion or something like that. Or
current US trillion. GDP is 25.66, right? So,
wow,
so 25 versus just over 4. So for it to be a competitive block between the two on GDP, but still,
that's just US. That's not even like if you add in the UK, right? Which if anything happens to the US, the UK is going to step in. Germany is going to step in.
Oh yeah. Well, it all depends on so you have these economic blocks, and the thing is, when they work together. And here's the real thing, and this I'll flat out say. There has not been a legitimate external threat to the United States since 1991, when the Soviet Union fell. And when that happened, the United States has historically always needed either an external threat or just an impetus to grow, but nothing quite like an external threat works. And so, like, if there were other major trade blocks that were beginning to make a push,
that could actually provoke.
The U.S. would suddenly go, oh, player 2 has entered the game. It's time to stop messing around. It's time to start.
Yeah, that would actually provoke some sort of economic, or not expansion, but some sort of aggression.
Yeah, some sort of economic response, and not like a negative one to them, but a positive one to the U.S. Now, what I can say right now is this: if you want a real positive economic reaation wherever you go, you need to check out drunkonomics.myspreadshop.com and find something there that tells everyone, whether you're an econoholic, a drinkonomist, just let them know you listen to Drunkonomics, and they're going to see it and they're going to go, either I know what that is, and they're going to be like, that's awesome, that's a good reaction, or they're going to say, what is that? And you're going to get to have a great time.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be huge. That's very, that's how you forecast economic prosperity in your enviroment or in your future. And you can get that at, what was that? Like, shop.
Drunkonomics.myspreadshop.com.
That's what it is. Drunkonomics.myspreadshop.com. There's black hoodies, black shirts, even darker black shirts, even darker black hoodies.
Golf shirts. Hey, here's the great thing. We've got travel mugs for your coffee. We've got metal pint glasses for your drinks. We have
those two.
We have hats for the beach, whether you're in sunny Southern California or in beautiful Puerto Rico.
And multiple logos.
Absolutely. We have new logos. We have those finally dropped. We have new new swag. It's there.
It's pretty sweet. I'm excited about it.
Now, if the economic prosperity that we've been forecasting or not forecasting has already hit you, if you're already in that economically prosperous zone and you just don't need more stuff, there's always Patreon.
Yeah, exactly. And you want to leave a tip of the tip jar? You can always find us at patreon.com/drunkenomics. That's DRUNKENOMICS.
Yeah.
Seriously, any sort of help there, any sort of participation there, and of course with our merch is very much appreciated.
Yeah, it helps us keep the lights on, the ice frozen, the fruit cabinet stocked, and the bourbon flowing.
Exactly. So seriously, I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. This is seriously like every week. It's so much fun drinking with you guys. But with that said, my encouragement to you as we round out this week is to please continue to fill and kill. Don't brag, just say. Continue to play chestnut checkers.
You like Joe Burrow, play chestnut checkers, yeah.
Yeah, like Joe Burrow. And of course, most importantly, do that one thing.
Hang on.
What's it called?
It's when you stay drunkonomical, right?
That's what it is. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.